One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is May 13th, 2012, Mother's Day 2012. This is another live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. And today I am welcoming back a frequent guest and contributor to the program, and an all-around lovely lady, Susan Lindauer. Susan, welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much. I love coming on your show, Popeye.
I love
it. I've missed you guys. I've been having some great adventures, and to be honest, after my very stressful, it's been very intense for the past few years. And for the past few weeks, I've just been kind of taking it easy. So I have not, for all of you who wondered, I've gotten lots of emails saying, where did you go? Susan, what happened? And I've just been relaxing. So I'm going to get back in the game. I'm not disappearing. I'm kind of evaluating my next step, and Orion has very graciously, a couple of months ago, Popeye talked about maybe helping me get a radio show, and I've been talking with your network a little bit, and if the offer is still on, maybe in a couple of months I will do it but it's everything is going very well. Let's put it that way. Life is good. It's a nice change from all the stress and if you think about all the things that have happened to me in the past 10 years, I really just needed to kind of let my hair down and kind of kick back a little bit.
Well, I'm glad you were able to relax a little bit, because I know it's been rough for you, and there's been times where you even were concerned, as well as I was, about your personal safety. So I'm glad that everything is on the up and up for you. That's good. The universe has a way of, even when things are bad, it usually arcs. So there will be a positive side to it. I know sometimes the road is hard, but it's good that you persevered, you went through it, and good things are ahead for you, Susan. So I'm happy, and I'm glad. I got to tell you, it's nice because every time I talk to you, you're always in a good mood, even when things are bad. You're just very positive and bubbly. So it's nice.
Well, I've been through real hell, and I just have come out of it just seeing what a fantastic earth this is. I mean, that sounds really goofy to say, and it sounds like insincere, but it really is sincere. It's just such a beautiful planet. And people are like, did you ever want to kill yourself? And I'm like, never. because it's just the sky is blue and the grass is green. And I've got a great garden. You should see my garden. I've been planting hydrangeas and hostas, and I've got fabulous azaleas out, and it's just, I've got coneflowers and coming in, and astilbes, and I mean, my garden that's what I do. I garden for like stress relief.
My mother used to.
Not that
it's actually it's very good for stress relief.
Yeah, it is. And it's like I've got this big piece of land in my yard and my house, and I've come through. I mean, I really feel like I can say now that I have come through this. And that doesn't make me, superwoman, but it just means that I have survived and has given everything that they tried to do to me. All the ways they tried to kill me off and tried to defeat me, and I came through it on the other side, and I'm happy. I'm really, truly happy. So I'm at a stage in my life when I can relax a little bit, and it just feels good.
Well, I can tell you the listeners will be glad to hear that, because a lot of people appreciate what you do, and they know that you're a tough lady. So they'll be glad to know that you're in good spirits. Although it's hard to tell, like I said, even when things are rough, because you're always positive and bubbly, even through the tough times. So that's one.
I appreciate it, because I'll tell you what's one of we can segue right into it. One of the reasons that I'm like gathering my strength. I go through periods where I do this, where I just, I kind of go to ground and I gather my strength, because I know a new fight is coming. And for me, the new fight, and it's going to start, I'd say that I'm picking up steam. I'm going back into active mode. And when I'm active, you've seen me, I'm very, very active. Even when my indictment ended, the first thing I did was got to work writing my book. And so, people didn't hear from me for a year while I wrote my book. But then I was off to Japan for my first book tour, my pre-release book tour, and I started doing radio, and it's just been very intense. So this is like I figured I had a couple of months before all of us really have to focus on the election. And the Republicans were trying to figure out their candidate, and we know the Democrats are with Obama. And so I figured that was the best time for me to just kind of chill and pull my energy down and just, not burn out and kind of re-energize myself, because we've got to figure out this 2012 election is no joke. We have to figure something out. We have to save our country. And I don't know what to think. And I'd like to hear from listeners today, because we've got, Romney on one side, we've got Obama on the other, and Ron Paul. What do you think of the Ron Paul strategy? I'm really, let's start with that. And then
I actually had a Ron
NDAA.
Paul representative on, I think it was last Friday, and we talked about this. He's not a representative from the official representative from the campaign. Let me rephrase that. He's an organizer from down here. But he came on for an hour and explained the whole delegate strategy thing. And it seemed, what was laughed off and played off as nonsense a few months ago is now, paying off. And the mainstream media even has no choice but to admit it. It's funny. A couple months ago, they actually stopped following his campaign, and now even with not following his campaign officially, they're forced to cover it because of the alternative media and things like that. And what's really encouraging about his campaign, Susan, and this is what I said when the Ron Paul guy came on, and Hector, the organizer, he agreed. It's going to be it's different than the 2008 campaign, because 2008 it was very tiny. It had the same powerful message, but not many people were listening.
Very powerful message.
But that's what drives it. It's not even him. It's the message itself. He's able to bring it across to you because he's a humble old man. Okay, but it's not about him. It's never been. We can't make it about him. We can never make the message of freedom. And personal liberty and personal accountability and things like that. We can't make that message about one person. We have to make it about all of us, because if we all accept that same responsibility and realize the level of things and realize where we are right now, then this country will actually, get some change. But I don't want people to fall into the, Ron Paul will come in and, say it would be cool if he got voted in, right? Say he gets like 70%
I'd
of the vote.
love it. Oh.
Well, if he got like 70% of the vote or some high percentage of the vote, they wouldn't be able to switch it with their program. Okay, they've even admitted that it only works if it's very close. So say he gets in somehow, miracle, whatever, he gets in. And if he got in, he wouldn't land on the White House.
Don't say.
Well, with the way they do vote fraud, with the way they hijack the elections, that's why I say that. But
okay,
we got a break sneaking up on us, Susan. So I'm going to pause it right there, and we'll pick up the convo.
We want to talk about Ron Paul when we get back.
Yes, we'll pick it up right with Ron Paul on the other side of the break, and then we'll get into your travels and a few other things.
And
the NDAA.
And NDAA.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss the rest of this interview. More with Susan Lindauer when we get back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. All right, Susan, let's get back into it. So when we got cut off by the break, we were discussing Ron Paul and the message. It's not really about the man, but about the message. That message really scares them. I mean, look what they're doing to try to derail him and not allow people to even hear him speak. Or, actually, that didn't work. So now what they have to do is pretend that he doesn't get any. Like he gets. They say, "Oh, where's Dr. Paul? Where is Ron Paul?" He gets 10,000 people at Berkeley. I mean, look, let's be honest. That's a liberal haven. And this man, who's quote-unquote conservative, gets 10,000 people to come hear him speak. Romney gets 75 people in a conservative area.
Mm-hmm.
And they act like you have every major news outlet there acting like, woohoo, woohoo. And this guy who's just, again, it's not really about him. It's about the message of what he, what he brings to the table. And he obviously... There are people on both sides of the fence, because really is no fence. The fence is imaginary. They just have you believing that there's a fence there. And there are obviously people on both sides of this imaginary fence that think alike. So everybody wants basic freedom and liberty. I think this whole country is tired of these wars. But a lot of people are manipulated. What say you, Susan, from your point of view? Do you see still a lot of this manipulation with the media?
Oh, I think it is extraordinary manipulation. But the great thing about it, and I despise the corporate media. Everybody knows that, for example, the New York Times vilified me, falsified reports about me, made up stories about me. Like for example, they had a lead sentence in an article that I quote, "She stuck her tongue out at the prosecutor." Now, this was the day of my hearing when my witness testified. Only two witnesses testified. I'd been under indictment for 4 years out of 5 years with not one single hearing until that day. And finally, I was able to prove that I was a CIA asset and that I gave advance warning about 9/11. The courthouse that the testimony occurred in was 1,000 feet from ground zero of 9/11 of the World Trade Center, where the World Trade Center used to grace the skyline. Okay, the New York Times decided the people didn't need to hear that. They made up a story that I, quote, stuck my tongue out at the prosecutor. And then they repeated all this garbage that I was this religious maniac, that I was a babbling fool.
You know that was a psyop having that down there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because
then they have the local people that are all upset about 9/11, and all they hear is this woman's an enemy agent, and they're gonna railroad you without any logical thinking whatsoever. They want you to act on emotion.
Absolutely. And the great thing is, here's the thing, the problem for we're using that as an example, and I don't want to go off on my own experience. I want to say, though, that the great thing is that the corporate media now has a run for their money. They've got a problem. They have lied to the American people. They have pretended that we're suckers and we're stupid. And, some people are. But I think a lot fewer people are stupid than they think. There are some, and I'll give you that there are some. I'd say it's probably like 40%. But the other 60% are aware that they're being lied to. And they listen to the blogs they check out what's happening on the internet, and they realize there's this great divide in the facts and the documentation, the primary documentation that's being presented on the internet versus the crap. I can't even say it because we'll get censored. That's being.
No, you can say it, Susan. Go ahead. It's bullshit. It's liberating. Okay. Go ahead and say it.
It's liberating. This bullshit crap that's being spewed by the corporate media, and so the corporate media, they've lost their credibility. They are no longer trustworthy, and so the candidates are in this bizarre position where they have a choice. They can either accommodate the corporate media and lie to us, or they can do what Ron Paul's doing and they can tell the truth. And they're only going to be respected by the people if they tell the truth. And so they're facing this big dilemma, I think, where they've boxed themselves into corners with their lies, and the people know that they're lying. And so every time they open their mouth and repeat the lies, we know that they're untrustworthy. And so, I think, I really do hope that Ron Paul would do one of two things. He would either, the first one is not the good idea, but he could be a vice president, or he could run independently as a third-party presidential candidate. And I think that right now, we the people need to draft Ron Paul. For either of those two, I'm just throwing this out to you, Popeye, that he's not going to get the Republican nomination. We cannot allow that to be the end of it.
Oh, of course.
We've got to stand up, because this is our country. We've got to save our country.
Well, you see,
I am convinced if we don't save our country now, we're lost. We've got to fight for America.
We are getting close to the point of no return. We are very close to that. And I think that when it comes to the Paul campaign, you see, if anything, I think that he might even realize, obviously he's not dumb, he probably realizes that he's not going to get the nomination, but the point is awaking that many people that are stuck in that right paradigm, that right side paradigm of the left-right lie, grabbing them and waking them up and shaking those people awake. You wouldn't get that if he ran independent right off the bat, because people would look at him and go, oh, he's just some independent nutbag, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you might get some, but he gets more exposure going up against the other Republicans. And then you get people going, hey, how come they won't let him talk? Just let the old man talk. Santorum's talking, Gingrich is talking, Romney's talking. Because we understand why they won't let him talk.
How could you think, not you, but how could you, the people out there in La La Land, how could anyone think that Newt Gingrich would be a better president than Ron Paul? How could Newt Gingrich be portrayed by the corporate media as a serious contender, or Rick Santorum portrayed as I know, but think about how absurd that is. They gave attention to Michelle Bachmann, they gave attention to Rick Santorum, to Newt Gingrich, but Ron Paul is the man the people love, and they refuse to pay attention to him. I think truly we have to draft him. And I think that we cannot, I totally respect what he's doing, that he's heading into the Republican convention, or at least he's jockeying for delegates. He's staying in as long as he can to influence the platform of the party. I think that's wonderful. But I think that's wonderful. I love that he's doing that. But I think at a certain point, America must have him in a leadership role. And I think that one of two things have to happen. Either he needs to be vice president, and we must insist that Romney must name him vice president, or we must insist that he has got to be an independent. I mean, I agree with you. I understand why I understand what you're saying.
It would be better. I wouldn't even say vice president. I wouldn't even say vice president. I would say independent. If he doesn't, obviously he's not going to get it, but let him ride that until he can't, until the train tracks end. And then once the tracks end, what he should do, if they were smart, his campaign would be talking to people like Gary Johnson right now and saying to Johnson, because he's running on the independent ticket, talk to Johnson and be like, look, how about Ron Paul runs and you run as vice president? And even if they don't get in, the point is, don't stand. Just what are you going to do? Sit back and take this on, on our laurels?
We cannot let our country go down the toilet.
Well, at least stand up
about it.
And This whole...
And he's got it. And the thing is, Ron Paul, if we draft him, and I think that's what we have to do. We have to tell him. Is that the music coming up?
Yeah.
We've got to tell Ron Paul what we want him to do, because he's got to know that we're backing him, because he's defending our values. We love the message, we love the values, and he's the only one who's going to protect them, so he's got to do it. He doesn't have a choice. The people have spoken.
Good point. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. More with Susan Lindauer when we get back. Stay tuned. All right, Susan, so getting back into it, the NDAA, because this is where we're headed with, I would say this transmission of this country has been kicked into overdrive, and we are heading into tyranny faster than ever before in history. And you have...
I agree with that statement.
You have all these new executive orders coming out, the NDAA, and now you yourself went through, under the Patriot Act, you went through...
I went through a dry run of the NDAA.
That's what I would call. Explain a little bit really quick, just, in a nutshell, to the listeners, what you went through and why you think, how that pertains to the NDAA today. Because I think it's a perfect example of what we're headed towards if we don't, pull our heads out of our...
If we don't get Ron Paul into office somehow. I think honestly, if we don't get Ron Paul into office somehow, this is what we're facing a stark choice. And think of it, Ron Paul is freedom, and the other side of it is some sort of martial law police state where we sacrifice more and more and more of our freedoms. Okay, for those of you who are tuning in, I was the second non-Arab American ever indicted on the Patriot Act. And most of you guys know, I gave advance warning about 9/11. I was the chief CIA and defense intelligence asset covering Iraq and Libya at the United Nations for 8 years before the war. I worked in anti-terrorism. The reason I was arrested, and they made up all kinds of ridiculous stories about me, was because I knew the real facts of things that they didn't want you to know. Okay, we've done shows on that, and you can go to the archives for that. What's really scary is how they attacked me. They didn't have any evidence against me, so they hit me with the Patriot Act. I was hit with secret charges, secret evidence, secret grand jury statements. I was never allowed to... What that means is I was never allowed to know who had accused me, what they said about me. The government was never required to tell me what I was accused of doing. The charges were secret. They did not have to show evidence that I had done it. All they had to say is that some unidentified activity occurred on some unidentified day. It broke some unidentified law. It is a secret. But Susan Lindauer has to go to prison for up to 25 years. After the Supreme Court struck down the federal guidelines, I was supposed to go to prison for a maximum of 10 years. So first it was 25 years, God. Then they dropped it down to 10. I'm like, whoa, this is supposed to, and I'm not allowed to know what I'm accused of doing, and the government's not required to tell me what the charges are or show evidence that I actually broke the law. Like if you rob a bank, there is the government is required to say on June 16th, the Bank of America on the corner of University Boulevard and Colesville Road got robbed at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There's a videotape which sure looks like Susan Lindauer showing that she went in there and pulled a gun on a teller. And in good faith, we're arresting Susan Lindauer because we think she did it because we have this video and here's the crime. They don't have to do that under the Patriot Act. My case is a dry run. I was then ordered to go to prison on Carswell Air Force Base. And I was ordered to surrender with no trial. I refused to plead guilty. I demanded a trial. So the reason we say that I'm a dry run for the on the Patriot Act is they pulled all that stuff. Then they threw me in prison without even a hearing. They categorically refused to give me a hearing. But because I had a judge, now this is where the Patriot Act is different than the NDAA. Because I still had a judge, I had a horrible public defender who was throwing the case every chance he got. But I had a wonderful uncle, fantastic Uncle Ted Lindauer, who is my hero. Okay, and he goes in there and he signed on essentially over the objection of my primary attorney. He said, I am coming on to this case as co-counsel for my niece Susan, and I said I want him. I had to sign a paper saying that I wanted his participation in the case, though my attorney was fighting it. See, this guy was like a total horrible man. My uncle came down to visit me on the military base. He had his documentation proving he wears a three-piece suit. He's 70 years old. No tie-dye and jeans. This guy's a professional attorney. He's a corporate attorney. He wears Armani, for heaven's sakes. He's a well-dressed, serious, tough attorney. He's a corporate attorney. I got to say that, corporate. He's not a peace activist. He didn't show up, with the nose ring and tattoos. They refused to allow him to enter the military base. First, the first time he drove 700 miles because he said he could think better if he didn't have phones ringing, because my case was so complicated. He didn't want to have any interruptions while he thought about my case. So he drove down to see me. 700 miles in each direction, because it was so complicated he needed to clear his mind. Okay, so he drives down. They tell him, first of all, there is no prison on the military base. And this Susan Lindauer is not an inhabitant of their military base under any circumstances I'm not on any corner of their base. I'm not in a closet of their base. I'm not a visitor at their base. They've never heard of me. It is absolutely wrong that I'm there. They do not know why he's been told that I'm there. Well, he says, he looks at them. He said, what? He said, and he pulls out the orders from the judge. The judge's orders say Susan Lindauer must surrender to Carswell Air Force Base. He said, I have letters from Susan Lindauer postmarked from your military base. There is a prison here. She is on it. Here's the judge's order. Here's her letters. And here are my attorney credentials. They say, well, you're wrong. You're wrong. I don't care what the judge's orders say. You're wrong. And so he says, well, I want to talk to, he's tough. He doesn't give up. He says, I want to talk to your commanding officer. The commanding officer comes out. He says, I second whatever my sentry has just said to you. You are completely wrong. There is no prison here. She is not here. Go away now. We refuse to allow you to stay here. We have MPs who are escorting you off the sentry post. You leave now.
And the whole time you were on the base, correct?
I was on the base. You bet I was on the base. And they had the military police, he told me this. The military police are like, go away, go away, go away. And so he leaves, and he said, well, I'm going to report this to the judge that I have come down here as I'm family and attorney. So he falls under both categories. And he says, I'm family and attorney, and this is and meanwhile, he's there on the weekends, and other families are getting, other inmates are receiving family visits at the same time that they're telling him there is no prison. They're just telling him there's no prison. It's not only am I not there, there's no prison.
These aren't the droids you want. These aren't the droids you're looking for. It's like Jedi mind tricks.
Yeah. And meanwhile, these other inmates are getting visitors right around him who they're like, yeah, you can go in, you can go in, you can go in. You are not going into the base. And that's because I was virtually an enemy non-combatant. I was on the Patriot Act. They knew very well who I was. They knew that the, quote, the so-called Iraqi agent, the enemy agent, wanted to see her attorney. And they're like, no way, no, too bad. So anyway, he reports it to the judge. The judge says, oh my God, okay, well, we'll try again. So he comes a second time. And the second time to cut the story down, They say there is a prison on the military base. However, there are no visiting hours on the weekends. And meanwhile, again, families are going right around him. He's come 700 miles. He's watching other people get escorted into the prison, and they're just going right around him, and every one of them's going in except him. So he says, well, I'm coming back with U.S. Marshals, and you're letting me on this base. You have no right to deprive an American citizen of the right to a trial, or the right to access an attorney, right to attorney access. That's sacrosanct. The third
Susan,
time,
I'm going to cut you off right there.
Okay. Sorry for the long story.
We're going to break, so I got to cut you off, but I want you to pick it up right there when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just a foreshadowing of what could happen if we don't stand up.
What's going to happen to you? It's going to happen to you. We'll talk about that on the other side.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Susan was talking about her personal experience, and she was explaining how it was your attorney, I believe, correct?
Yeah, my uncle, who was my attorney.
Yes, okay. Her uncle, who was her attorney, kept getting turned away and told that first was told that she now, mind you, she's in a prison on a military base, and first he's
Carswell Air Force Base in Texas.
Yeah, that first he's being told there is no base, or there is no prison on the base. Then he's being told that there is a prison, but it's past visiting hours, and he sees. Meanwhile, the whole time he sees people going in back and forth, so he knows he's being lied to. This could happen hypothetically under this NDAA and all this other crap. And I'm not saying anybody should.
This is not hypothetical. Let me just correct you on that. This is how it will happen to you. What's going to happen is when they start arresting people on the NDAA, what will happen is your wife or your kids will be looking for you, and they're going to go around to all the different military bases locally saying, is my husband here? Is my husband here? Is my wife here? And the military base is going to look you straight in the eye, and they're going to say, no, there's no prison here. No, your husband isn't here, and your husband could be 100 yards away. And they're going to pretend that you're not there.
I even think the general public would have the wherewithal to know to go to a military base. They would probably start with the police. Now, let me ask you this, because you've experienced this yourself, and what I meant by hypothetical is I don't mean that I don't want to put out that fear vibe that they're, while we're on the radio right now, they're at your front door. That's not what I mean. That yes, it could happen.
Yes, they're planning for it to happen.
Yes. Let me ask you this: you've been through this. Like say you got picked up, right? When you got picked up, the FBI came to get you. What would happen if they picked you up? Now, under the Patriot Act, they don't have to tell anybody. They can just come grab you. What happens when your family notices you're missing for 2 days and they go to the local police? What does the local police, what do they get told? And what are they supposed to tell you when, you're like, so where is my relative? What are they supposed to say? I don't know.
Where's my mother?
Yeah, where's my father?
Where's my mother? Where's my father? What if you're a single mother? What if you have, you come home from work and your wife is gone? I'll tell you, it's my guess is that they will let you leave a note. They will give you 30 seconds, and it won't be long. I have been you will have, because they'll put you, when they come to arrest you, they don't give you time to think. They take you out. They come in, they grab you, and they move you. And they don't let you write like a long, detailed letter. You may get 30 seconds or 60 seconds.
Really quick your arrest. How really quick, just in a nutshell, in a few minutes for the listeners, just so they understand how. Because I don't think anybody understands like how they do it. Usually they come really early in the morning, which is what you experience.
Yeah, they come really early in the morning. They snuck. I have dogs. I have dachshunds who bark at everything. If a squirrel runs across the yard, my dachshunds bark at it. If the mailman, the mail lady is coming down the street, they know if she's a block away. And I had one mail carrier who had heavy feet, and I'm serious. This mail carrier, they heard the feet. They could be in the back of the house, and they would know the mail carrier was coming in the front yard with a closed door, and they'd run from my bedroom all the way to the front of the house and jump up on the couch and start barking before the guy was even in front of our house. They knew just crazy dogs. But they did not hear FBI agents surround our house, sneak up on us, come all the way to the door, come up on the porch. They were totally ignorant of this. My poor little baby dogs. And they were so traumatized by the FBI that afterwards they would not let anybody touch them for about a year. My neighbors were like, I had people who could come over and try to pet them, and they would just get hysterical. They did not want anybody touching me or coming near me. It is a very, very, very frightening thing. I was taken away. I was in bed when they came. They allowed me enough time to throw on some clothes. I had to be watched getting dressed by the FBI agent, female FBI agent. Had to put on my underwear in front of the female FBI agent. And, the whole thing, she had to touch my clothes to see what was on. She had to physically touch my clothes before I put them onto my body, my bra and stuff like that. I was really, and I'm just like shocked, in a state of shock. And then as soon as I had my clothes on, they rushed me out the door. It is a frightening thing. They will move you that fast. I wanted to phone someone to ask them to come take care of my dogs. And and if it had been children, they might have done something. But they didn't let me even write a note. I said, could I at least write instructions to someone so that if they come to when they come to my house, they'll know what to do with my dogs? No. And if you have children, you better tell your children who to call, because otherwise they're going to take them away with Child Protective Services is what's going to happen. You will be picked up and your children will go off to Child Protective Services. So you better be prepared to say, no, my children already know what to do. My children are going to call their grandparents. Call them right now. Do not touch my children. That kind of thing. You better have a plan worked out before they ever show up at your door. And the thing is, I am more afraid of this than you are. I expect now, when I saw the NDAA and I saw the manual that the Department of Homeland Security has created a manual for re-education of activists, I immediately perceive myself being arrested and immediately perceive what that camp is going to look like and how it's going to, the texture of it and the lifestyle of it and the daily routine of it. And I know that I'm going to be in that situation. I have no doubt that when they come, they'll come take me. I am in no doubt of it. And I am making decisions now in my own life. One of the things I've realized is that I have to get myself back into a space. You were saying that I'm being so positive and stuff like that. I am mentally adjusting myself to the possibility that I could be arrested again. That is my immediate reaction, and my soul is getting back into a space where I'm going to be able to handle it. And honestly, I'm going to be able to handle it. But I've just spent the past few weeks just putting myself back into that mode where I will have everything taken care of so that financially I'm going to be okay. I know my dogs are going to be okay. I love my dogs. I do animal rescue work, you guys. So I have several dogs. But I expect the worst for this country. I do not expect us to. I think that we're coming to a point of confrontation. And if I sound like I don't think this is not a rant. This is not hysteria. If you saw me, you'd say Susan is very calm. If you saw me in my day-to-day, I'm out gardening. I'm not crying. I'm not weeping. I'm not hiding under the bed sheets. I'm loving my life, and I'm enjoying the beauty of the earth, and I am emotionally, I'm going to be, if they come, I'll be there. I'll be ready. They are not going to break me again. I didn't break before, and I'm not going to break this time either.
Good. That's what they want. And hopefully, I'm still, I'm still fighting. That's why I do this show as much as I do, and I do as much radio as I can. I'm still fighting to hopefully head that off at the pass. But
we've got to. We must. head it off at the pass.
Closer and closer, people need to realize, the general masses need to realize, it's like Obama just came out and supported gay marriage, right? And I said,
yeah.
I saw somebody posted this on Facebook, and they were within like 2 or 3 hours, and somebody shared it, and I saw it, and it was correct. And it was just this little picture, and it said, "Oh, so Obama supports gay marriage, huh? Yeah, well, he used to support medical marijuana too, and now look what he's doing." And it's a good point. He doesn't support any of this. It's all about politics. It's all about getting you to like him because the election's coming up, and he wants to get back in the office. And he knows that he needs, brownie points. So he's trying to suck up to anybody he can, and honestly, he didn't even want to do that. He was kind of forced into that position by Joe Biden because Joe Biden made some comments, and then because of the comments Biden made, he was forced to react to it. So it's not like he's some hero or anything, but he's using this as a political cover. And, he's going to... Obama actually...
He's got to find somebody to vote for him. That's the way I look at it. He's got to find somebody who's going to cast a vote for him because he's lost the anti-war community. Well, the anti-war community would have been 10% good, solid voters, except then he went into Libya. That was stupid.
So? Do you really think that he's lost them? Because I haven't seen them come out. When Bush was president, they were out there all the time. And then right after Bush lost and Obama got in, Code Pink went to Afghanistan. I was a little irritated at that because I was like, come on, you really? And they were, we're liberating these women and giving them rights. And I was like, come on, now you're just being used to push the propaganda party line. And it kind of, I still say, where are all the anti-war organizations now that, Mr. Peace...
Well, but see, that's the problem. That's the problem. We're all kind of like, I look at the election with this, is that the,
yeah,
we'll talk about this on the other side.
You pick it up right there. Ladies and gentlemen, hour number 1 flew by. Hour number 2 coming up. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. More with Susan Lindauer when we get back. Go check her book out. It's on Amazon. Go get her book.
Extreme Prejudice.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on today's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. It is Sunday, May 13th, 2012, Mother's Day 2012. And my guest is Susan Lindauer, former CIA asset and victim of the Patriot Act. Susan, going into break, I mentioned your book really quick. And I gave it all about 5 seconds. And I know that you coming on with, today is not a plug for your book, but I'm going to make you shamelessly plug it anyway, because I think people need to read it, and I've read it. And I have to tell people, first of all, it's refreshing to hear Susan, speak very candidly in the book. And second of all, the book kind of reads a little bit like a spy thriller. So it's not, once you start reading it, it's a page turner. You'll get into it. It's not very boring. It's not trite. It's a good book. Where can people get it?
It's at Amazon.com. It's called Extreme Prejudice, The Terrifying Story of the Patriot Act and the Cover-Ups of 9/11 in Iraq. And you'll get a fresh perspective on 9/11. You'll come away knowing that we absolutely expected 9/11 to happen. It blows the lid off a lot of those lies that you were told. But you also get a totally new picture about it, the war on terrorism in total. Because I covered every terrorism case from 1993 on. And then the second half of the book is about the Patriot Act. So you're going to learn, it gives you a total different perspective on terrorism and national security. You'll understand about Iraq and diplomacy, and you'll see all the parallels to what's going on with Iran, okay, and how all the arguments that they used against Iraq are now being used against Iran. But the real problem for everybody is the Patriot Act. It is much worse than anybody knows. And if you haven't, you think you know how bad it is. They try to tell you that the Patriot Act is only about surveillance of international phone communications. I heard Richard Clark on Bill Maher just Friday night say, it's only for the foreigners. Don't worry. Pardon me, that's bullshit. They got 28,000 phone calls on my wiretap, 8,000 emails, hundreds of captured faxes. Now, I was an asset, but the time that they were doing me was when I was doing the anti-war stuff. And they are not, it has nothing to do with international communications at all. It's about being an American citizen and opposing the government. And they are coming after us. Terrorism is no longer about violence, because I dedicated my whole life against violence. Terrorism is now about sedition. And sedition is a very loose word. I mean, it sounds like this big word. Sedition is a word that we're all going to come to know and understand because it implies that we're just threatening our society and we're threatening to tear down the institutions of our society. But really, if you're speaking out, if you're defending truth, if you are challenging the comfort of the elite, okay, Occupy is sedition. The Occupy movement is sedition. What I'm doing, what we're doing here is sedition. We're challenging the comfort of the elite. That's all it takes.
Well, in their eyes,
not
Susan,
one of us are violent. We are nonviolent people here.
In their eyes, talking to your family and trying to wake up your own family would be considered sedition.
Yeah. I was accused of giving my cousin a very friendly, polite, warm-hearted letter saying, please don't go to war. And that was considered sedition. So, I mean, be afraid. You know, when they talk about who...
And would they classify you? An enemy agent, right?
An enemy non-combatant.
All for saying...
An enemy non-combatant people.
All for saying you had prior knowledge and you had given them prior warning about 9/11, that, meaning you would come out afterwards and said, hey, they knew that was going to happen, and... You came out and said, no, Iraq has no WMDs, and tried to get the truth to the people so that they wouldn't be, lied into a war, which inevitably we were lied into a war, and Susan was made out to be a bad guy and vilified. And what happened in the end? She was proved to be right. Where are the weapons of mass destruction? Oh, they were smuggled into Syria.
Yeah, I said Iran.
Here's how you
I said Iran would rise as a regional power in the Middle East.
But here's how you know they're lying.
I said that democracy would convert power away from the moderate Arab governments to radical Islam. I was right. I said that that Al Qaeda would rise from its quote. Al Qaeda will rise from its grave of seclusion, and it will attract charismatic leaders inside Iraq to fight the occupation, and there will never be rose petals for long. And it's just, I was right about every single detail. They declared that I was incompetent. Which, by the way, that's a favorite thing they do with people that are in the know. They get them put into loony bins, and then they get them pumped up on all sorts of chemicals. This happens all the time. CIA agents, people that generals, right? Doesn't it? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And so when I'm telling you that you need to be afraid of the NDAA, not you, Popeye, I know that you are aware, you're awake, and I want to be in the same camp with you. I want to be in a camp with you. I want to tell them to send me down where you are. I would say wherever he is, I want to be there. We'll hang out together. Because I'm telling you, this is very serious. We are at a tipping point of our country, and we are either going to we're going to look back on this conversation in 12 months. Okay, 12 months from now, we're going to look back on this conversation, and either we will have defended our country and we will breathe a sigh of relief, and we will say we have nipped this in the bud, we've turned this back, we have defended freedom, we have prevailed. Or we're going to be saying, hey, did you hear so-and-so got taken? Did you hear this guy got taken? And that's going to be where we're at. And notice in these, you can look at my website, extremeprejudiceusa.wordpress.com, and I'm sure Popeye's got it, and the Intel Hub has got it. The manual that the Department of Homeland Security has created, a manual. I mean, this is like scary stuff for how they're going to re-educate the process of propagandizing us.
A lot of
re-education. It's like the Cultural Revolution from China.
Well, a lot of it comes right out of North Korea and some of these other the Soviet Union back in the day. But see, this isn't new. I mean, a lot of people think that this is all brand new. This isn't brand new. This is just, and it's not Obama ushering it in. I mean, it is. He's the puppet in charge right now. But honestly, this is stuff that's been around for 20 years. And what they did was they blew the dust off of it and revamped it for the modern day. They're adding things to coincide with the modern day, but this isn't anything new.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And let me just add to that. Yes, you're totally right. The Patriot Act is 7,000 pages, modeled on the Soviet Criminal Code of 1926 and the Nazi enabling laws of 1934. The Department of Homeland Security is the new KGB. They had secret charges, secret evidence. They had the gulags in the Soviet Union, which are now the new FEMA camps. On my website, you'll see that Department of Homeland Security is admitting how many rounds. God, did they buy? You tell me. It's like 5 million or 200. Oh, please tell me how many rounds it is.
It's like 450 million rounds of 400 caliber ammo, hollow point.
Hollow point bullets. Now, why do you need hollow point bullets to take an American?
By the way, hollow points are only made for one thing. They're anti-personnel rounds. They're not target shooting. When you target shoot, you use ball rounds, which is full metal jacket. You would not use hollow points. They're only for what they're sold to the civilians for personal defense, which is their anti-personnel rounds. So there's only one reason for them. They're not. It's not
to kill American citizens.
Exactly.
To kill American citizens, so they can shoot us when. And I don't have a gun. I mean, I know some people. I know a lot of. I'm beginning to regret that I don't have a gun. You can sure make someone kill. I believe in the Second Amendment, everybody, but because of my arrest, I'm not allowed to have a gun. So that's why I don't. But I regret it.
I'm going to cut you off because the break's coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard her. She wishes she could have a gun. So if you have the opportunity to do so, I suggest... All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. And as always happens when Susan comes on my radio program, the time goes by in the blink of an eye. So, Susan, there's a few other things we could harp on NDAA and everything else. And I don't want to keep... I don't want people to be afraid. I want them to be knowledgeable and check it out. Again, the best thing to
we're going to nip it in the bud. We're not going to let them do it.
No, we're going to stop it. That's the important thing. People need to know about it so we can end it. If you want to learn about what could happen, read Susan's book. Again, Extreme Prejudice. Go get it at Amazon because it'll give you a window to inside what could happen. Now, Susan,
it's a worst case scenario, but like Popeye is saying, we're not going to let it happen.
No.
It is, and I admit that I do get very upset about it because they did it to me, and I am a dry run for how what the problems are. But knowledge is power, and like you see these politicians who are afraid. It's like a worst. They're getting ready for our country to collapse, as if we're going to have like some kind of civil war or something like that. Where I would be amazed if there was a civil war in America.
Where either we come and we come to this awareness, this awakening, and we stop watching American Idol, and we stop watching we stop watching Dancing with the Stars and all this other crap. Either we come to this awakening, either we wake up, we come to this evolution, or we're going to come to the path of a prison planet. Bill Cooper said it best. We have a choice coming up. You either go down the path of, this enlightenment, and we move on as a human species and everything, and we can explore outer space and the sea and everything else, or we don't, and we move on to this prison planet type existence. So I think the choice, I think it can go either way. True. I think to answer your question in the most honest way, Susan, I would have to say that I think the choice is ours. I think we're on the fence here, and we have to make a choice as a species. Are we going to let it become a prison planet type existence, or are we going to Are we going to, and pull ourselves out of this and collectively evolve past this so we don't even need to have this police state type structure because it'll be irrelevant. We won't need it anymore. That's the only way to get past this.
Yeah,
we can't go back.
Exactly.
We have to make this irrelevant and call it a day. That's what we have to do.
That's right. We have to say enough. That's right. And I think that the great thing is we have such a force with social media, with the internet. We started off the show talking about the failure of the corporate media. So many Americans, younger Americans, middle-aged Americans are hooked into the internet that even if they're asleep 50% of the time that they are awake, they're getting more access to better quality information, and they're learning something even subliminally, subconsciously. They're more aware of things. Even if they don't agree with the 9/11 truth movement, for example, they're at least aware of the 9/11 truth movement. They're not in a bubble the way that they used to be. And so it's going to be interesting because in this election, the corporate media are the shills for propaganda, but the people are not buying the propaganda. We're not fooled by the propaganda. And we're in a position now to really start making some good decisions for ourselves, regardless of whatever the government tries to do. So it's going to be interesting. I think we can beat it, but I'm also very sensitive to people trying to hurt other Americans because I've been there too. You see, I've lived through this, and I feel really strongly that part of my responsibility now is, last year, when the 9/11 anniversary came up, I spent a lot of time talking about 9/11 and making sure everybody knew the real facts. And I will always be there to talk about 9/11 and to make sure that the real story comes back. But I think that the bigger issue now is the fraud of the war on terrorism, and we are giving up our rights. We don't have to give up our rights. We don't have to be afraid. The Arab world is not going to destroy us. If anyone's going to destroy us, we're doing it to ourselves. And we're doing it, but we're bankrupting our country because of these wars. But we can make a choice. And we're at a stage now where we can make new decisions. We have made terrible mistakes. We've made grave mistakes. But now we can look at the world and say, okay, yeah, we screwed up. But we're not going to screw up anymore. We refuse to go into war with Iran. We refuse to allow our government to go into war with Syria. We're not going to hurt our American soldiers anymore. We're not going to allow Lockheed Martin to use corporate welfare to bankrupt our middle class. We're done with that. And so we have power. And I think that the key is that, the government wants us to cede our power, I guess is the right word. They want us to give it up, to forfeit our power. And we're not going to do it. And we can take our country back. We really can, but we've got to do it now.
I agree. There's a window that's rapidly closing, and we either, do something about it or don't. I would prefer that everybody did something.
But I think that Americans want to do something. I think that there's...
Uh-oh. Susan, you with me? Yeah, hold on, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to reconnect her. This happens once in a while, as the listeners know. From time to time, Susan gets cut off. When we were doing when I would have her on about the Libya invasion, and we were talking about what was going on, and we had built the website for Libya, the phone would get cut off.
Popeye.
I was just telling the listeners how you have a habit of getting cut off there when we're talking.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, I was just going full steam. I think that our country, we can save this country. And if you look at what we did even 6 months ago, they were ramrodding us into war with Iran. They were pushing, and it's inevitable, it's coming. And we, the people, threw on the brakes. And that's what I was saying when they cut me off. The people threw on the brakes, and the people said, you're not going to do it. You're out of office if you do it. And now all of a sudden the government's like, okay, we're not going to talk about war with Iran anymore. Yeah, it's a bad idea. The people have spoken. And Obama is now afraid of, I will give you this, I'll challenge you with this, that the I don't believe he's sincere about this gay marriage thing. I agree with you that it's opportunistic, and I would say to you that it's opportunistic because he knows that he lost the anti-war votes because of Libya. And he knows that those people are not out there supporting him, championing the Democratic core. Anti-war voters are not chomping at the bit for him. He's lost them. So he's trying to find a vote somewhere. And so he's reaching for the gay population. Okay, he's reaching for those people. And it's cynical. I don't think he's sincere. I don't think we have anything to worry about, because I think if he gets reelected, he won't do anything for gay people. I don't think he cares. I don't think anybody has anything to worry about, because I think Obama is so wishy-washy. Nothing, not that I would worry about gay marriage. I'm libertarian, so I'm like, whatever you want to do is your business.
No, I know what you mean.
I really am libertarian. I'm libertarian on that. But I don't think anybody should be concerned, because
marriage thing. He's riding that whole political football as a political football. That's what they're being used. To put it plain and simple, they're being used, and it's disgusting, just like everybody else is being used. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're going to break. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen. During the break, Susan and I were chatting, and she I had said something, and she said I should say it on air, and I agree. It was something that I didn't want to just, I had to stop myself so I could bring it back up and say it live so everybody could listen. And my suggestion was for us not to fear a lot of these executive orders and stuff like that. We should take that power back from them and use it to clean this mess up, get somebody in there that can, this would be the ideal way, right? Get somebody in there, they could use that power, turn it around, get everything okay, Susan?
Mute the phone. Somebody's at my door. Sorry. Mute the phone. Sorry.
That's okay. See, that's a little creepy. Susan was getting interrupted, and all of a sudden she gets somebody at the phone. So I'll try her back in a few minutes. But that's kind of... I hope she's all right. And I'm not, this isn't for dramatic effect either, ladies and gentlemen. But this kind of stuff happens all the time when she's on. And... every time she gets into certain things about the wars and everything else, that's usually when things start to happen to her phone. And when she gets into, again, the information about Libya, and we got into that. Yeah, if I can get her back, we'll get more into her. She just recently made a trip over to Lebanon and came back, and I wanted her to talk about some of the stuff that she had learned while she was over there, people she had talked to, and her thoughts on the Arab Spring, because we were discussing the Arab Spring. And we were discussing how it's been controlled, by the intelligence agencies, and more people over there, apparently in the Middle East, are starting to realize this. So, a lot of them that might have bought into the whole thing that this was 100% grassroots, starting to realize that a lot of this was fomented by the intelligence agencies. So, she went over there. She was able to talk to a couple of the people over there, and while she was there, they got it. I guess they told her their opinion. So if I'm able to get her back online in a few minutes, I'll try. I'll give her a few minutes just to make sure everything's okay. And I'll get her opinion on that. But check her book out, Extreme Prejudice. And, what's really interesting, by the way, with this whole her getting interrupted, because she got cut off a couple times last segment. And this always happens when we start to talk about these forays into the Middle East and what's going on. We were talking about Libya. We made that, with the help of Susan getting videos to me and pictures and evidence, we put together that website, the now infamous obamaslibya.com, which got Federal Jack attacked, hacked, the server attacked, hacked. The original Obama's Libya got completely destroyed. We had to rebuild it, and then we got to put it out there, and then we had to take it down again because people were attacking it with false child pornography charges. And then, of course, when the hosting company saw it, they realized that it was not child pornography and apologized for taking the site down. But eventually, we just left it down because it was bringing so many attacks every day. It was literally taking Federal Jack down because they were all on the same server. And it was literally taking Federal Jack down all the time with it. And not that the site itself doesn't garner a ton of attention and attacks itself, but that was really hitting it. So it just goes to show you that when we start talking about these certain things, it seems to piss a few people off. Let me see if I can ring her up while we're online here, and hopefully everything's okay. But this stuff is serious, so this just goes to show that sometimes, and who knows, might have just been a guest coming over an opportune moment, so that's why I gave her a few minutes just to make sure everything was okay. All right. Well, I'll try to get a hold of her back during the break. I hope she's all right. But I don't think she was black-bagged or anything, although that would be really creepy if that's what happened, but I doubt it. I'm not going to try to spread that fear on air. Anyway, I urge you guys to check out what's going on in Syria. It's very close to what's going on in Libya. And I had actually wanted to, hopefully if I can get Susan back on, I wanted to ask her about her opinion on Syria, because you could totally tell what's going on there. And they're admitting that they brought Libyan fighters, these quote-unquote Libyan freedom fighters, okay, they brought them over to Syria now, and some of these, you can call them battle-hardened because they've been in firefights and stuff, and you bring these guys, they're airlifting them, NATO, so, mostly U.S. military, obviously doing most of the supply end of it, like airlifts and stuff, but I'm sure there's a couple other countries involved too. But they're airlifting these guys and bringing them into Syria to help the quote-unquote Free Syrian Army. Now, these are the guys, the Al-Qaeda fighters, the admitted Al-Qaeda fighters, mind you. And they're bringing these people into Syria. That should really frighten people. Or not, let me rephrase that. I don't want to say, I hate saying that word. Let me rephrase that. No, not frighten people. That should wake you up. That should make you realize what's going on. This is controlled opposition, if anything. If that's what I think that's the best thing to call it, is controlled opposition. Because I don't want people, I don't like putting off that fear vibe where people are, oh my God, be afraid of this or be afraid of that. I don't want you to be afraid. Yes, fear is, sometimes helpful, like be afraid of the shark. Don't go swimming with a great white shark. That would be stupid. But that's primal fear. That's a little different. The fear that you're being put through, this constant drip of fear that they're getting from us, that's different. This is manipulative fear. This isn't primal, don't feed the bears type fear. In fact, that fear is the fear of the chemtrails, or the fear of fluoride in the water that sets off alarm bells and says, well, I don't want to drink cancer causing chemicals in my water. I don't want to drink that, and I don't want to die at 30 or 35 of cancer or lymphoma. So that itself, that's survival. But the unfounded fear that you're bombarded with is, be afraid Al-Qaeda is going to come out of your closet and bomb you, when in fact we're supporting them in a foreign country, flying them in there. And this isn't the first time, obviously, but now it's in your face. And they're even forced to admit it because of the alternative media. The alternative media is responsible for bringing a lot of this stuff to light. If there was no alternative media, there was no internet, do you know how far this plan would be by now? We would be beyond where we are now. That's why they're trying to rush and they're putting all this stuff through so fast, because they're freaking out. They are backed into a corner. They are so afraid right now, it's not funny. That's why they have to wear suits. That's why they have to dress up. And case in point, look how they're teaching the police. I've said this before. They're teaching the police and the government agents to be afraid of everybody, but especially the local cops and the sheriffs and stuff. Be afraid of everybody. Everybody's bad. That's what this training comes down from on high. Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. Be afraid of the Darth Vader outfits. Be afraid. And then you get a cop the other day. Not the one that kicked the pregnant woman in the stomach, although he's a special kind of dirtbag in his own right. That kind of behavior too. But you get a cop. I just saw a video where this cop, they were chasing this young kid, and I guess he jumped over the hood of the police car and kept running. And finally, they got him. It was a bunch of them, and this cop, they were beating the living crap out of him, and the kid, they were beating the living crap out of him, and he was unarmed. He had no weapon, no nothing. It's not like he had a weapon on him. We got to take him down. Blah. I mean, I don't care if you run from a police officer. It doesn't give the cop the right to kick your face in and beat your head in and everything else. And yet, they chased him and beat the hell out of them and everything else. And again, this attitude, it's not, well, that's one bad cop. It's this attitude is pervasive now through everything, the military, the police the departments, the sheriff's departments, because they're being taught that the general public could be terrorists and everybody's a dirtbag. They want to take your freedoms. They love Al-Qaeda, blah, 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 and we are the law. And that kind of mentality, day in, day out. You live in that culture. You live that culture. I understand I was in the military, so I guess I understand it from a different perspective. Fortunately, my sense of self was much stronger than any of the brainwashing I was ever put through in the military. Others are not so lucky. That's another reason why they don't like hiring smart people to be police officers. And, police departments all over have admitted that they have lowered their IQ hiring standards because in the case of the one guy that's sued because he wasn't hired because he was told he was too smart, when the news asked the police department said the reason that they do not hire people above a certain IQ is because they found that people with a higher IQ were quitting the job sooner and they had a higher turnover rate, which should tell you something about what the people were being forced to do. So, but rather than change their policies and the way they do things, no, they just rather, hire less intelligent people who won't question the orders that they're given and who will just follow them and do what they're told. Remember, just following orders. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to break. I will try to get Susan back on the line. We will be right back in a few minutes. Do not go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back, final segment. And Susan is back with me. No, she was not black bagged. Like I said, it was the neighbors making an unscheduled stop, so not a big deal.
The neighbor children, yeah, they want to have a pool for the summer, and they had to explain all this to me and tell me how much they love my little dogs.
Yeah, sometimes you got to get the neighbor's permission and stuff like that. So not a big deal. Like I said, Susan's alive and well. Okay.
Yes.
Susan, final segment. You went over to Lebanon recently. What do they think of what's going on with the Arab Spring and stuff in the Middle East? What's the Middle Eastern perspective instead of the mainstream media perspective here?
Well, it's fascinating. I was over there when the American soldiers shot in Afghanistan, shot 16 Afghani citizens, including 6 children under the age of 5. And the whole story was that they didn't even tell you was that he set them on fire while they were alive. I don't even know if most Americans are aware of what he did. He not only shot them, but while they were still alive, while they were writhing on the ground, he set them on fire so that they would die. I
don't think he was alone. I think there was more than one of them, and I think they're just making him the fall guy because a lot of the children I've seen, the testimony from some of the kids there, and people went over there and interviewed some of the locals, and they said that there was more than one of them. And when you realize that they were dragging, shooting people and then going back in and dragging the bodies out, one person couldn't have done all that by himself.
I agree with you totally. But what they did was they set them on fire while they were living, including
disgusting.
Little children,
including
like babies who were writhing on the ground, like 2-year-olds.
Do they realize over
crying?
Or at least in certain parts that not all Americans are like that?
Well, I'll tell you something. What happens is I saw the Arab media right at that moment, and it's a powerful force that you don't even comprehend because the differences in the American media and the Arab media is they have graphic coverage of everything. So you see the riots.
Yeah,
they show the protests.
They don't censor.
They show the bodies.
The blood
they show the funerals of these kids. And so they have, you see tens of thousands of people, of Afghani citizens marching through the streets. You see the bodies of the burned children. So they don't even just tell you that it was a 5-year-old who died. They show you the body with the gunshot and the burns on the body. And you see the face contorted as it was dying. It's in just the screams, you can see the agony etched in their faces. So the answer to your question is, what do they think of us? We are hated so deeply, even without that Afghani incident, which was happening right at that moment. We are despised. They kept saying to me, China is rising and you are falling. Goodbye, America, goodbye. And when you go down, we will kick you. You've been kicking us and beating us, and when you go down, you are going down, and we will never pull you back up again. You will be gone. The Arab Spring has been truly a catastrophe for Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and by deduction, the rest of us. It has brought power to the Iranian contingents. Iran, all the people who are coming into power are conservative Islamists. They have pushed, whether they're Muslim Brotherhood, whether they're strictly Iranian or not.
You ever think?
The Lebanese.
I want to post something to you for a second, Susan. Do you ever think that this is being done on purpose, so that, perhaps the state, because the State Department had their hands all over a lot of those uprisings? What if they did this on purpose, knowing that certain individuals, and they helped certain groups get into power, so that later on it would become a much larger problem, where the only way around it would be war?
Well, now I'll tell you something. I think exactly the opposite. I think if it was George Bush, that would be true. But I think Hillary Clinton truly was a fantasist. She believed that she was going to bring in democracy, and democracy would mean modernization and progressive thinking, and all these young people would have young ideas, and they would be open to the West, and they've been schooled overseas, a lot of them. A lot of them have lived in the United States, have lived in Europe, and they would have kind of a westernized focus, and she was totally taken by surprise. They have moved sharply to the right, radical Islam. The reason that we've stopped supporting the Syrian opposition is because the Syrian opposition is hardline against Israel. And Israel, before this started, Hosni Mubarak had a peace, Camp David. You had Libya, which was tolerant of Gaddafi, was tolerant of Israel.
Remember the videos
They were going to do business with them. But now the new governments deeply, violently hate Israel.
Remember them shaking hands a couple years ago? Remember Mubarak and Clinton and Obama and Gaddafi and all them? They're all hanging out, talking to each other. And within a year and a half, Mubarak's out. He, quote unquote, has a convenient stroke, and he's out. And Gaddafi's dead. And Libya is destroyed.
That's right.
And that's what they want to do to Syria, by the way. That's what they. That's what they want, and that's what.
But the thing is this. Hillary Clinton and Obama were so stupid because they really did think that that Libya would be once it was pacified, the rebels would come into power and they would calm the people down, and things would go back to being stable. And if you could just get rid of Gaddafi, wouldn't life be better? And I know that because I talked to people. Gordon Duff, remember, Gordon Duff of Veterans Today, talked a lot about that right at the beginning when he was like, "It's a fait accompli. We've decided we're going to remove him. Oh well, they'll just go on and they'll be happy once they don't have him around." And instead, Libya has disintegrated into civil war. You don't hear about this, but the fighting is continuing. It's very ugly. Women are being raped. There be the heavy emphasis on Sharia law. These are very modern people who are being dragged back into the 12th century, and they don't like it.
Oh,
so
Libya is being
people,
destroyed. It is.
Libya is being destroyed.
Before NATO went in there, Susan, you could go to college. It was paid for. All that stuff. Yes. Women had more rights. Now it's going back to where women aren't going to have these same rights.
Women are being forced to marry against their will. I mean, women who are used to having jobs and educational opportunities are now being told that they're required to get married when they're 15 years old and bear children, and they're being forced into polygamous marriages where they're the third and fourth wife, and they don't have any rights to say no. They're outraged. They're furious. There's war going on there, and the Lebanese were like, the Lebanese were laughing. The people I met were Hezbollah, and these were. We'll have to talk more about this. I know we got 5 minutes, but they said, you have aligned yourself with the Salafists, who are the most conservative Islamic people on the planet. And they're like, you're afraid of us because we are Hezbollah. But we are the moderate conservatives. You don't even know who you are friends with. You don't even know that you have chosen the most conservative of all conservative radicals. And you don't even know who you're dealing with. They laughed at us. They're like, you're the stupidest people. You don't like us, but our women have jobs. Our women have education. Our women are moderate. We wear the hijab, which covers their hair, but they don't cover their eyes, and they don't wear the burqa. So they're conservative and respectful, but they still have the right to marry. They have the right not to marry. And they're like, the women you're supporting, the society that you're ushering in, but they're like, you're so stupid that you don't even know this. You don't even know the difference between us. And so
the Bush administration didn't even know the difference between Sunni and Shia, for Christ's sake.
God. Yeah, that's right.
Well, look at the official story in 9/11. The hijackers. Why would they be wearing red headbands? Okay, why would they be wearing red headbands?
That's right. That's
Sunnis
right.
wouldn't wear a Shia adornment. Okay, but yet these guys are supposedly Sunnis and they're wearing a Shia red headband. Doesn't make sense. 4,000 years of fighting and these guys are going to wear the other one. I said that'd be like a black guy wearing a Ku Klux Klan robe. Not going to happen. Okay, not going to happen. That's the animosity between them. People need to understand this. And again, Susan, you are so right. I'm going to have you back on so we can get more into this because I really want to get.
I'd love to come back on.
Get the Middle Eastern perspective of the politics and of the things that are going on. I'd like to know really what they think because I know that there are people that are angry at us, but it's not because we have freedom. It's because they had.
Oh no, they don't. They don't regard us as having freedom. They don't. That's not what they think about us at all. They don't. That's not what they.
They know we live in a police state, right?
In a what?
They realize we live in a police state.
Yeah, they do. They do. They think that we're just stupid, and we're also going down.
Well, they're not too far.
And China. I'd love to come back on to talk as soon as possible, like next weekend or the week after, to talk about this because this is a big deal. What really happened in the Arab Spring a year later?
All right. Well, we'll set the date now. I'll bring you back on next Sunday.
Excellent. And we'll talk about the Arab Spring a year later after the Arab Spring.
Okay, perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, there you go. Tune in next Sunday, and we're going to pick up right where we're leaving off today, and we will get into the Arab Spring a year later and the mess that's being created and what's going on. Susan, thank you again for coming on today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
I love coming on. Anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Love you all. Stay tuned for Joe Joseph and Tim Watts' Conspiracy Chronicles coming up next.